pregnant mother of 3 dies after she suffered from cardiac arrest. She was just 26 years old. And then we have a college football player from Jackson State, Kaseem Vauls, who suffered cardiac arrest but thankfully was resuscitated. He remains in critical condition. That is going to be the subject of today's episode. And so from Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and our episode is starting right now. So, a 26-year-old Zoe Green, a mother of 3 children, ages 5, 4, and 10 months old, was expecting a 4th child, a boy they had planned to name Kobe. She was 7 months pregnant when suddenly she died of cardiac arrest, and unfortunately her unborn child also passed away due to oxygen deprivation after his mother died. So what precisely happened here? Zoe Green suffered from a sudden cardiac arrest back on February 7th and was found dead on the floor in her bathroom by her mother. According to a report by the Daily Mail, a family friend, Kelly Mercer, said that Zoe had rang her mother at 5 or 6 in the morning, saying she didn't feel very well. Her mother lives 5 minutes away, but by the time she walked down, Zoe was dead on the floor in the bathroom. Kelly told reporters that Zoe was sent to the Leicester Royal Infirmary because, as she put it, there's nobody that does post-mortems on pregnant ladies in her area. Kelly told the media that hopefully by the end of the week they'll actually know what actually happened. To our knowledge, she was fine. She just woke in the night and didn't feel well, so phoned her mother, whom would pop along. At the moment, it's down as cardiac arrest, but obviously it may be something else with the post-mortem. We're doing different things to try to help. And help Kelly has. She's helped organize a GoFundMe for Zoe's family to help with funeral expenses as well as her children's future. At the time of filming of this episode, the GoFundMe has raised over £4,925. In the meantime, the 3 children have been split between her parents. The 2 eldest children are staying with them, while the youngest son, Ralphie, is currently staying with his dad. Now, Kelly Mercer went on to tell the media that we're just trying to raise as much as we can and just make the day a bit easier for them. We will fundraise until March 9th, and then I'm going to do a coffee morning on March 10th, unless it's the funeral. Zoe went to school with my daughter and came to my youth group as a kid. She was a lovely girl and very bubbly. She would work part-time and was a really nice girl. It is absolutely awful. Now, these sort of tragic events just keep cropping up. For example, less than 2 months after the infamous cardiac arrest on field by Damar Hamlin, the safety for the Buffalo Bills during a nationally televised Monday Night Football game, we now have yet another cardiac arrest, this time at the collegiate level. Kaseem Vauls, shown here working out just a few weeks prior to this incident, is a 21-year-old defensive lineman from Jackson State football's team. He suffered cardiac arrest this past Wednesday. The night before the incident on Tuesday, Kaseem had gone to the University of Mississippi Medical Center for stomach pain on the advice from his father, and the following morning he went into cardiac arrest. Thankfully, the doctors managed to resuscitate him, and he was placed on a ventilator and underwent surgery later that afternoon. A cardiologist at the hospital informed his father, William, that his heart was only functioning at 10 to 15%. According to the Clarion Ledger, William Vauls said his son had not been feeling well for a couple of weeks and that he had told his son to go to the emergency room. He also said Kaseem had been participating in activities with the football team but had not told coaches or trainers about his stomach pains. William was quoted as saying that what the doctors think happened is that when Kaseem's heart was failing, that was what was giving him the stomach pains. His liver was suffering as fluid built up with toxins in his liver, kidneys, and blood. All those toxins built up in his bloodstream, and his heart could not operate properly, and the machine is being used to clean out the blood and toxins. Now, William went on to suggest that the heart failure could be genetic, as he, William, was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, or AFib, 7 years ago. Now, the latest update to this story, posted by Kaseem's father via Twitter, is that Kaseem had a heart biopsy to take some tissue samples to see the cause of everything, and it appears that the lab work is to be back this Tuesday. But according to William's father, he is progressing well in the right direction. He opened his eyes yesterday. He is in stable condition, and he is fighting. He goes on to ask people to continue to pray for his son, as he has a long way to go, but again, headed in the right direction. Now, this kind of story about cardiac arrest happening to young people like Zoe and Kaseem would have seemed incredibly improbable just a few years ago. Sudden cardiac arrests by the young and seemingly healthy is becoming an ever-increasingly common news story. Mainstream media news outlets are working overtime to help educate people on what might be the cause of this disturbing new trend. For example, let's take a look at Salon, which posted an article back on February 13th titled, "Why Heart Attacks Are Rising for Young People According to Experts." They quote Dr. Ron Blankstein, a preventative cardiologist and professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, who said this: "We are in a society now that people are less physically active. There is more use of screen time in general and less activity for a lot of people for their job. They sit all day. The main reasons for the spike in youth heart disease have been increases in obesity and diabetes." Blankstein also went on to say that young people dealing with mental health issues are also turning increasingly to substances like marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, and nicotine, all of which are also linked to heart disease. Beyond what they put into their bodies, however, modern American young people are also simply not moving enough to stay fit. And finally, they address the elephant in the room: COVID-19 and the COVID vaccinations. Here is what they say. They start with telling their readers that it is especially important for young people to receive COVID-19 vaccinations. Patients infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes COVID-19, often have damaged cardiac muscle as a result. Although anti-vaccine advocates have argued that COVID-19 vaccines are heart dangerous, the same studies that identify a slightly increased risk of myocarditis linked to vaccines also emphasize that there are far greater health perils involved with not being inoculated. Dr. Blankstein went on to say that although observed rates of myocarditis were higher than expected, the benefits of vaccination against SARS-CoV-2 in reducing the severity of COVID-19, hospital admissions, and deaths far outweigh the risk of developing myocarditis. Now, while that last statement from Dr. Blankstein coincides with the World Health Organization, the CDC, and the FDA stance on the matter, we do know that there is some cause for concern. Not only are young people the least negatively affected by COVID-19, but then we have recent studies like the one out of New Zealand that showed that while the incident rate ratio of myocarditis and pericarditis following the second dose of the vaccine was 4.1 per 100,000 as an overall average, meaning 4.1 people per 100,000 had an incident of myocarditis and pericarditis, the more concerning data was that young people ages 5 to 19 had a much higher incident rate ratio of 25.8 people per 100,000 following the second dose of the vaccine. This kind of data is why some places, like in Florida, they are now recommending against young people taking the vaccine unless they have a comorbid condition. And now the state of Florida's health agency called Florida Health has issued an urgent health alert associated with the COVID-19 vaccination program. The agency reported disturbing increases in safety signals associated with mass COVID-19 mRNA vaccination and are now calling for absolute transparency among healthcare providers. They are telling them that they should notify patients of these risks. To back up their health alert, Florida Health has cited a number of studies as part of their reasoning. First, according to study Freeman J. et al. Vaccine 2022, mRNA COVID-19 vaccines were associated with an excess risk of serious adverse events, including coagulation disorders, acute cardiac injuries, Bell's palsy, and encephalitis. This risk was 1 in 550 individuals, which is much higher than other vaccines. A second study, Sun CLF et al., found increased acute cardiac arrests and other acute cardiac events following mRNA COVID-19 vaccination. And finally, Dag-Berold, J. et al., JAMA New Open, assessed the risk of thromboembolic and thrombocytopenic events related to COVID-19 vaccines. They found preliminary evidence of increased risk of both coronary disease and cardiovascular disease. Now, clearly, this story isn't going away anytime soon. The normality of hearing stories of young people having cardiac arrests is heartbreaking, but it appears it is just going to keep continuing. Now, rest assured, we here at Trial Site News will continue to keep you posted on what happens next, whatever the studies find and wherever the story goes. You can guarantee that we'll be there letting you know what happens next. And in the meantime, that's going to bring our episode to a close once more. For more content like this, be sure to check back to this channel daily, Monday through Friday, and for written content every day, visit us at trialsitenews.com. As always, thank you so much for joining me on the program today, my friends. From Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and I will see you all next time.